Jon Gosselin was unable to believe his good fortune. Having been blessed twice, initially with fame, quickly followed the twins and subsequently the sextuplets. And noisy, yet what began as a dream of swiftly creating a large, contented family turned into something quite different. From a contentious and widely reported divorce along with his former spouse to the rocky partnerships after Jon's death has not been at that quiet. And now we find ourselves, and all of a sudden everyone is discussing, will Jon Gosselin find serenity once more? Finally, or is it forever goodbye? Let's disclose all about the early existence and notoriety of prior to the television cameras, Jon Gosselin, public turmoil and tabloid headlines. Jon Gosselin was only a man from a tiny village he grew up in Wyoming, Pennsylvania, in a somewhat ordinary house with his mother, Pamela, and his father, who tragically died after high school. In 2005, Jon didn't specifically, he implemented, run toward fame. Solar panels in the sweltering Pennsylvania sun, put in long hours at the local eateries, and even prepared meals at TGI on Fridays in Lancaster. He gives his little payrolls to charity, was discreet and straightforward, and roughly the same distance from reality TV as you might acquire in a few short years. Jon would go from burger flipping to exploding on national TV, which caused everyone to start discussing about him. It began during a picnic held by the firm. Fall 1997, a day that most people forget, but not for Jon Gosselin, where he first encountered Kate Kreider, was fearless, determined, and didn't Jon. She is reluctant to express her opinions, and more restrained, was taken by surprise, but quickly captured, and by 1999 they were married and had twins, Mia and Carrera, shortly after. That would be sufficient for many, but Jon wasn't sure and wasn't one to settle regarding having additional children, but Kate, always the resolute one, moved ahead, and they received more than one child. They gave birth to 6 sextuplets on May 10, 2004. Their world blew up in 8 hours. Children's bottles, diapers, and chaos. Strangers gazed at the supermarket store everywhere. Whispers followed them out of the store aisles. The type of murmurs that come from parking lots that begin modestly but swiftly expand from on the exterior. They appeared to be the idyllic family from a storybook, yet within the people were under increasing pressure at home. Didn't simply observe due to the numbers, they observed because of anything about them felt excessively large and wild. Near the edge to turn away, but it didn't. It took a while for their story to air. Not because they asked, but because everyone's lips for attention, yet their existence was the type that you couldn't overlook. The Gosselin family wasn't merely interested with, was attracting a lot of local news stations. Every action they made was captured by cameras, and Discovery Health soon arrived. Knocking twins and surviving sextuplets broadcast a year following the sextuplets, created to give spectators an unplanned preview into a world most people couldn't fathom. The audience was captivated by the special in enormous quantities, and only a year later, there were even more buzz. TLC soon took notice of the potential, transforming their disorder into a routine every week. But it wasn't until April when the Gosselins received their own Jon and Kate +8 is a show that their fame skyrocketed, becoming one of TLC's top-rated programs during its prime. 9.8 million people watched the season 5 premiere. More viewers than any other program on America couldn't watch television that night. Obtained enough. They weren't merely observing, they became invested in the Gosselins. The faces of household names were everywhere. From Dawn to magazines demonstrates that they even brought their tale to publish alongside co-author Beth Carson. Jon and Kate published a number of blessings, getting by when having twins and sextuplets, that swiftly ascended to the on paper, the New York Times bestseller list. Everything seems to have fallen into position. But while the world looked on, awe-inspiring fissures were spreading behind the scenes where the cameras grew larger, approached, and the pressure increased. What anyone anticipated was how quickly, what exactly would happen if it all fell apart. failed to live up to the grins and matching attire, and the way it fell apart, becoming one of the most popular reality TV enduring impressions. Let's examine the tumultuous divorce drama of Jon Gosselin. The declaration from Kate Kreider that the Globe was astonished on June 22nd. Episode of Jon and Kate +8 from 2009. After over 10 years of dating, Jon and Kate Gosselin was splitting up, with the divorce process had formally started. Jon was still reeling nearly instantly. According to reports, the public blow was looking at a new apartment in the city of Manhattan, even touring units in the Upper West Side at Trump Place. Jon, owned by Donald Trump according to Gosselin, he never desired his 10 years of marriage to fall apart in front of the Globe in a desperate attempt to slow the speed at which he filed for divorce, to postpone the process for 90 days in the hopes that, at least on paper, so there is room for a reevaluation in an uncommon instance of public repentance, he acknowledged. I regret my behavior since Kate and I parted ways. I made a bad decision in interacting with other women in public so soon. He was watching at the same moment, paying $22,000 in child support each month. Purchase a number that simply served to meanwhile. An already erratic split. Kate clarified that this was not about appearances in public on her side, that she had already suffered harm in her own remark, pointing to what she referred to as Jon's actions as the last straw that left her unable to do anything but file legal actions to safeguard she and their 8 kids. Although the language was professional and icy, clearly determined, in the background rumors erupted as the tabloids came to life, such as Jon Gosselin's name and wildfire was unexpectedly associated with Haley Glassman, a 22-year-old with a claim to fame, went beyond the press. She was Kate's plastic surgeon's daughter. The relationship was too romantic and sarcastic, too blatantly obscene to overlook. Glassman emphasized their connection started only after the marriage had disintegrated, but at that time it didn't issue, the public having previously made its roles that Jon played in the court of opinion the antagonist. But the drama was not at all late. In the summer of 2009, police officers were sent to the Gosselin residence in Pennsylvania's Vernersville after an alleged furious dispute over Jon's selection of a babysitter. There were no arrests filed, no charges. But the picture of cops not affiliated with the once ideal family just getting home was enough to cause another tremor. Through a public that is already unsteady, the picture-perfect brand story, it was now eroding and fractured. And Jon wasn't only fighting his former spouse, he directed his ire at the very business that had turned the Gosselins into a well-known brand. As part of his intentions he filed for the divorce of Time and Salvage, a case against TLC, the organization that +8 accuses Jon and Kate of breaking the laws against underage labor and making threats to categorize production teams as criminals trespassing if they were brave enough return in just 3 weeks to the family home later. The original program's last TLC did not withdraw in this episode. Renamed, the program reappeared with a new name. Jon's Kate +8 appearances grew irregular, then almost non-existent. The family's story went on, however. The show had changed, and the American family is no longer the same. Infatuated with the network had selected a viewpoint that the audience also. Moreover, TLC wasn't going to allow Jon. The story is rewritten by Gosselin without a struggle against his publicity stunts. The network responded by lawsuit alleging that he violated his agreement by making unapproved appearances beyond their control. They weren't merely unhappy. They were requesting damages of more than $30,000. The legal team vigorously resisted, arguing the contract was nullified, and the program was renamed to. They asserted that Kate +8 had altered a different game, and Jon had never even a lawyer in attendance when he executed the first deal. Whatever he believed he to take back his marriages, imagine how he was in the spotlight. The divorce was finished and already gone. Ending on December 18, 2009, Jon Gosselin was unable to postpone Kate any longer. departed with sole custody of all 8 kids and complete possession of the Johns family's house in Wernersville, was struck twice in the same month that his Haley Glassman's girlfriend revealed their split, which showed she had found that Jon had supposedly been once more being unfaithful, but this time with no aside from Kate Major, a tabloid reporter. However, despite the tumultuous divorce, the drama continued on August 22, 2017. Finally, the stress broke out in public. Yelling contest at the office of an orthodontist office over Hannah, 13, came to an end. No one was there when the cops were summoned. Detained, but the consequences were obvious. Jon took Hannah home, and Kate was sent to the district lawyer for explanation of their custody arrangement. After several months, Jon was given custody of Hannah. Kate's for all time. The appeal was denied because to be out of jurisdiction. For nearly a year later, Jon appeared in court once more, defending Colin, who had spent the previous 2 years in a rehab center. It appeared to be struggling for the final traces of what was once his family. When Kate didn't show up in court, Jon received a complete physical examination and legal custody. Colin returned home shortly after. From then on, it was time for Boxing Day. The only way the ex-partners communicated was attorneys with whom they co-parented entirely dissolved, and at the very moment that it didn't seem like things could get much worse. Money issues arose after the divorce. Court records disclosed Kate was accused of withdrawing $100,000 from the trust of Colin and Hannah accounts to live. Kate retorted. The funds had been used for necessary costs of living, education, and other expenses, but the timing caused people to take notice because she had recently bought a $750,000 lakefront residence that was allegedly making $40,000 every time. For Kate Plus, her dating program spin-off dates, Jon described her behavior as repulsive, asserting that she didn't regret accepting from the very kids they used to have promised a terrible court to the globe. Fights, tense relationships, and then Kate and her family moved between states. Will Jon Gosselin ever return? Even for their kids' benefit, and why is Jon being discussed so much again? Jon Gosselin's divorce following their Jon, your marriage is permanently gone. Gosselin talked candidly about his connection to his former spouse, Kate providing insight on their current unexpected interview dynamics that seemed less like a reckoning and more like a Jon sits down with E! News to recap. Expressed his reality in a manner that directness without the necessity for dramatics to like a stomach strike. He inquired about his dialogue with Kate. He didn't recall. He stated bluntly, "We don't communicate." I believe that her voice was last heard in someone said, 2018, no calls, no texts. Just stillness, with no pretense of co-parenting. Spanning more than 6 years, with just brief breaks through legal motions and court filings. The last time they shared a room with intent was throughout their conflict. One of their 8 children, Colin, whose existence had subtly broken apart from the family members' meticulously crafted on-screen story. Colin had charged Kate with verbal and emotional abuse as a bombshell that Kate vehemently disputed urgency. But the court ultimately took the Jon gave him possession of the starting a new tabloid conflagration that is somewhat drawn out for most folks. Tragedy, losing a home, a marriage, and every day being with your kids could have left Jon with lasting scars, although it appeared to adjust with unexpected fortitude, maintaining composure in the midst of the chaos and stable. By 2024, Jon had emerged from the debris and entered a new chapter, one that is not network-marked cameras, but through a recent partnership that felt pleasantly typical. And her name was Liz. Janetta is an IT professional who is 27 years old, and mom to 3 children, whom they met at a restaurant in the Philadelphia area that is far from the orbit of reality TV that formerly defined the blonde and statuesque Liz. In Jay's world was swiftly stereotyped as a Kate by the public in a similar vein. Either she nor it was flattering to Jon, but even as rumor had it that Jon seemed unconcerned, perhaps having to learn the hard way how to get over the commotion and go on. She hadn't seen Kate +8 and Jon, but she just knew what the tabloids had to say. Informed her that Jon had a history of dating. A mess, but what she discovered rather, he was something unexpected. She would later add that it was funny not to be warm at all what I had assumed. Maybe it was the separation from the news reports that provided their partnership's foundation, but most likely, Jon was able to meet her with genuineness instead of baggage for a man whose personal life had previously been in some way, he had administered public property. To come out of this grounded, bruised, but far for Jon Liz, going from broken wasn't just a new connection. She demonstrated that you may start over, even after the messiest possible unraveling fractured custody battles in the courthouse, and you could still find alienation for the first time. Anything approaching tranquility. It has been a long time since he was someone's ex-husband or the person who went bankrupt on national TV. He was only Jon, and he had arrived sooner than everybody else anticipated. Following the turmoil and demise of his well-known union with Jon Gosselin started the silent, challenging task of rebuilding his life and discovering happiness once more. It appeared for a time that he had discovered it when Liz Janetta was observing them walk through the streets arm in arm. Jon was cheerful and at ease in Philadelphia. Turned away from the man who was once characterized by custody hearings and tabloid meltdowns with Liz's and his own 8 children 3, they trivialized the insanity. Giggling about bedtime customs and the every night, they receive a circus of schoolwork. Liz smiled when asked, "Along awesome," concerning the kids, but reality is seldom as windy as those early morning strolls, and the merging of 2 large families in the city meant planning mayhem. And even Jon Gosselin is getting better after years of legal conflict and psychological effects to stay current with his IT work, media appearances, and ongoing legal disputes, and Liz balancing a full-time job with the flaws in parenting started to appear. Simple things turned into logistical nightmares, and the dream gradually faded. Skinny, they decided to call it quits after 6 months. Not enraged, but rather with a sigh of although it was a nice idea, reality wasn't. The Jon handled the end at the appropriate moment. Superior to most, he didn't pass out, or instead of retreating, he took this step. Slower, more subdued, and more assured of what he needed, and then Stephanie Lebo appeared. She was a chemist with a strong foundation and surprisingly uninterested in his previous TV career. In 2021, they met at a friend's cookout. During a night filled with joy and fireworks over the ensuing years, their relationship, Stephanie was unfazed by the deepened. Jon's complex past consisted of his divorce, the controversy surrounding custody, or the burden of being the subject of tabloids. Alongside her, Jon discovered something he hadn't had in a long time. Lengthy peace. They chuckled, and they listened and made room for one another. And more than anything, they constructed something that didn't require a crew of cameras in order to feel unique. Jon eventually asked to Stephanie at her preferred eatery, Willow, on the lights in Park, Wyoming, were comforting. The food was low, and for Jon Gosselin used to be just a dude, and he begged her to drop down one knee in love. Without hesitation, she agreed to marry him. Following years of news coverage, heartache, and Jon Gosselin discovered a hard-won healing. His path back to contentment, but the vows wouldn't be the test. The routine times that came after. Jon, currently the dad of 8 grown children, while Stephanie is raising her own 3 children, weren't merely merging a family, they were attempting to put their lives back together. Formed by Jon's disparate past, children had witnessed their father's breakdown and reconstruct following a highly public during divorce. Stephanie's kids were getting ready to receive a stepfather whose name had previously been used interchangeably with what they might have in a reality TV scandal. Wanted to know what this new family meant for them. But if we can be anything, as of right now, Jon Gosselin is not longer yearns for a show. He desires stability because he's not pursuing a portrayal of his life for the cameras, constructing one for the local population table. and attempting to recover time lost after years of being in the spotlight. With Family Jon's most illuminating chapter, Gosselin's account might have been penned by his kids. What was the fate of Jon Gosselin? The oldest of Meline and Cara Jon's children at the age of 24, daughters are enjoying their life. Away from the mayhem of reality TV, earned a degree from Syracuse University. During Cara graduated from Forum with a degree and currently employed with Bank of America. But success has not resulted in peacemaking. The twins have separated from one another. Their father, Meline, has publicly disapproved of Jon's approach to family matters, particularly in relation to their sibling Colin's lack of response to Jon's. The oldest daughter says a lot about Colin, the one youngster who stood in contrast securely in Jay's corner following placement by Kate in a mental health hospital, and in 2016, Jon took the initiative and took custody. Colin has been frank about his mother's relationship and fervently devoted to his father, currently a Penn State college student with a Collins bond, is a side business. Jon has continued to be among the few. Hannah, one of the constants in his life, she's lived with sextuplets, who also picked Jon with him for years. Despite remaining near to the remaining siblings, Kate is currently enrolled in the University of Miami. Hannah stands in for Jon's work to construct a sturdy object from a shattered family. Their bond has been one to provide Jon with mutual support. A unique feeling of unity in the midst of so much distance. However, for the remainder of the Leah the sextuplet and Alexis Aiden Joel, their relationship with their father is shaky, yet it was preferable that they remained with Kate and had mostly kept quiet about Jon. Occasionally, posts on social media make reference to family get-togethers, but Jon is conspicuously lacking. Whether intentionally or situation, that these kids have maintained their separation, as well as Jon seem to be acutely conscious of the gap in the breakdown of Jon's connection with his children, reflect the division that described his complex, divided public life, and characterized by some people's loyalty and others' silence today.